Um, yeah, just say yes.
Didn't
Move the
we,
page.
isn't that actually approving the budget?
No, it's making a motion to move the
No.
page. We've done that in the past, and I don't know
I
if
thought
it-
we just did that in the budget approval meeting.
That overkill?
yeah, I think we did that. Yeah, that was the final meeting when we were going through with our recommendations.
Yeah, I thought for
Well,
workshops, I'd be like an official.
Right,
Let's just say that we're finished with this budget, we'll move on.
right.
Okay. So you just ask if anybody has questions, and we'll just go on.
That's fine.
Okay, you're live. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll call to order the first budget workshop for Thursday, April 22nd. If you can all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the
to the
flag,
flag of
United
the
States
United
of
States of America and to the republic for which it
which it
stands,
stands,
one
one nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We just checked and there was nobody in the queue for public comments. So we'll move forward with our budget review. The first department is Human Resources and Legal Compliance.
Good evening.
Good evening.
If I may, very briefly, the Department of Human Resources continued generally with its major functions, including personnel transactions, employee and labor relations, workplace safety, OSHA compliance, as well as compliance with various regulations, including the ADA and the Family and Medical Leave Act. What the budget features this year is increases in two particular areas that I'd like to point out. The area relates to number one, fees. Generally, fees include mandatory screenings. That would be anything related to background checks, intensive evaluations at the pre-employment stage. To the extent that any department experiences an increased amount of hiring. For instance, our police department had to address a number of vacancies. You're going to see a related increase in fees from my office because my office is coordinating all of those screenings. And then the second area you will see is tuition reimbursement. Again, those fees are related to costs that we are contractually mandated to address.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add, Dana? Are you ready
No.
for questions if we have
Ready
any?
for questions? Thank you.
Okay. If any of the council members have any questions on the Human Resources and Legal Compliance budget. No. Seeing none. Dana, thank you.
Thank you.
And if we have no questions, we'll move to the next page. The second item on the budget list is the Registrar of Voters, page 28 and 29 in our budget book.
Councilor Greenspan, I just want to disclose that since my husband is a deputy registrar, I'm going to refrain from discussion on this particular segment.
Thank you. We'll note that.
I believe Tom Puglisi just has to unmute.
Tom, you with us?
He's unmuted, but I don't hear it.
Yeah, I saw he unmuted. We just don't hear you, Tom. Should we come back to it, John, if he's having some technical difficulties?
I mean, their expenditures went down a little, so I don't know if we're really gonna have much in the way of questions for us. So,
I think it fluctuates depending on the election that's going to occur
yeah.
during that budget year. where there's not a presidential one this year. And I think there's probably not even any Senate or Congress elections, right? I think it's just the local town council and Board of Ed elections coming up. So as long as they don't have a lot of primaries or anything, I think the costs will go down and stay pretty flat. But I think Tom is unmuted. If he wants to add anything else to it, or
Tom, are you able to hear us? Okay, well, I'm assuming Tom's having some technical difficulties, so if there's no objection, we'll move forward, and if Tom's able to come in, maybe we come back to this page.
Yeah, I did have one question, but I think we'll.
You want to put it on the, you want to put it on the record?
Yeah, and I'm not sure who can best speak to this. So, last year we had, due to COVID, we had the, I guess we'll call it the no excuse absentee voting in the early mailing period. It's my understanding that a lot of that is going away because they were limited by the executive orders, but there's also potentially some other legislation that, at other levels of government that may open that back up again. So I don't know if that would have an impact either way on what was in the projected, expenditures for the upcoming year for the registrar. I don't know if it's going to move the needle a lot, but if someone can address it, that would be good just to make sure that we have that accounted for.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. All right, we'll move forward to economic development, page 36 and 37 in the budget book.
That's me. Good evening, everybody.
Hi, Ray.
My budget has not increased from the last budget session. This year economically has been pretty difficult to attract businesses, trying to keep them here. For upcoming year 21-22, we will be looking at marketing some of our targeted sectors, which will be biomedical, health, advanced manufacturing, and IT. That's part of our marketing strategy that was identified in our marketing plan a year and a half ago. We'll also be looking at, this ARP money. That has to be projects involved, so I'm sure we'll be involved in that also. I will also be doing quite a bit of farming this summer, getting out my farm equipment, my buckets, my rakes, trying to, oversee some of the remediation efforts, the housing demo, the barn project, and possibly the land use plan for the whole property. So those are kind of what we're looking at this year. Updating the CGI video that's been on the website, that needs to be updated. And also coordinating, hopefully, with the state's workforce development plan. That would be very important for workforce development and getting the proper training for potential employees, particularly for manufacturing. Questions?
Okay.
Yeah.
Open up the questions.
Alan, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Ray, is there something that you see other towns doing, like South Windsor, Glastonbury, Cromwell, that are attracting, these large buildings that budget-wise is restricting you from taking a similar path to marketing or anything like that? Are there any restrictions that you're seeing that you wish you had that other towns are doing?
No, the only restriction that Rocky Hill has compared to those other towns is land. We do not have the land that Berlin, South Windsor, Glastonbury has. That's been a drawback. I've responded to many requests for project needs. They're large projects. The largest property we have is our gravel pit and the Russo property, and there are issues with that. We have smaller parcels, in the corporate office park. But the main competition right now is real estate. we can't make more, so we have to try to do what, try to operate within our confines right now.
Is there, I mean, do you have a brochure that shows like across from, what's on Brook Street? Is that Burrs?
Yeah.
Gardner, is that still Gardner's land? Across
1 acre is Gardner, the rest of it, the other 2 parcels, the house and the tree lot, those are
Okay.
privately owned by the same individual.
But I mean, do you have a brochure that potential developers look at to say, okay, here's a parcel, here's the maximum amount of building you can put on it, similar to, Ames or Brook Street or Corporate Ridge, things like that?
Oh, yeah, I work with brokers all the time.
Okay.
I send out their listings, I add to that when I can. Again, it's competition. We just need to fine tune the sectors we want to focus on, the ones I mentioned earlier, and really focus on marketing those particular sectors. Those sectors were identified in our needs assessment that was performed by CERC back a year and a half or 2 years ago. And we need to focus on those, which are the growing sectors in the state, by the way. And Rocky Hill is uniquely situated. It has prime location potential, highway access, geographical location within the state, access to freight rail, which not too many towns have now. We have that one parcel that has access to freight and access to interstate highway. And we have a very highly well-qualified workforce right now. And we have some rather large corporate institutions, manufacturers that will add potential to the attraction element of future, of those target industries. Burris, Arberg, Henkel, ERS Engineering, and several others that are high, very well known corporations in the world, actually.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that there weren't any budget constraints on your end, that there would be, well, gee, other towns can do this, but we can't because we don't have the budget for it. Just identifying anything like that, but it sounds like you're in good shape.
No, we're in pretty good shape. And, I'd love to have $100,000 line item to dish out to potential relocation costs, but that's not going to happen, at least not in the next few years anyways.
Okay, all right, thanks, Ray.
So, Ray, I have a question for you. Can you walk us through from your, day-to-day operations perspective? What time of your role is spent in maintaining current relationship with the business owners here in town versus how much time you spend developing new relationship, exploring opportunities, talking to people who can be part of your plan, who can relocate here. Can you give us a sense of what does it look like in your typical day when you break these activities down?
No, I don't have a typical day. Much of my time is spent looking at grants, putting together grants that, you guys never see because we never get them. Doing grants takes a long time, takes a lot of research. Not enough time, my time was spent doing what I think really needs to be done much more as business visitation. Going out, visiting and being out. And, the Economic Development Commission 2 years ago had a business visitation program. We started doing that. Obviously this year that stopped, but we don't do it enough. And for this coming year, I like to go out and go at least four businesses a year. I'm sorry, 4 businesses a week to do some visitations. Large corporate, big tech, the largest employees, largest taxpayers to the, some of the smaller retailers. So I don't do that enough, but I spend most of my time, like I said, doing some research, putting some plans together, working on farms, and coordinating activities with planning and zoning and the community development offices, setting up coordinating meetings with prospective developers who have questions. Many times I take the lead on that. coordinating those calendars and sitting in and participating in those pre-development meetings. But it's not the same every day.
Yeah, no, the reason I broke it down, I'm sure like it's I was thinking about a typical day, not like really, pro forma, but a typical day. But the reason I was asking that question was, are we, in terms of, your role, do you think of that role at this point as more as a development role, or as more like maintenance role, or like you talked about maintaining those relationships or keeping the businesses here, retaining them in Rocky Hill. And then there is this part of like what we call business development, right, in the corporate world. But the other part of it, the third part of it, which you kind of talked about, right, which is the grant writing, right, which is, it seems like take a big part of your role, like in general. But
Grant writing, yeah, and also working on the TIF project, which we need to finish up on. That's going to require quite a bit of research. But most, I was hired for business development, and that's been pretty consistent through three town managers at this time. A lot of the other, more of the local retail, smaller business outreach and events and, ribbon cuttings is performed by the chamber. That's what the chamber is for. And in the past, I've worked, in years past, I've worked pretty closely with the chambers through the past 15 years or so. I need to get back and working with the current board of directors more so than last year, the year before. But a lot of the outreach would be through those chamber events also.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Ray, I was curious on the, we've been seeing a real estate boom on residential real estate, right? I think Rocky Hill's leading a 5-town group that has really been knocking it out of the park. And I was just curious, any of that bleeding over to the Main Street business rental?
Like the Silas Deane Highway?
Yeah.
Or Cromwell Avenue? There has been some interest. A lot of my interested entities are looking more for purchasing property. The business are looking to relocate, are looking to buy property or buy an existing building. And again, that goes back actually to John Emanuel's question. We don't have building inventory like Berlin has or some of the other surrounding towns have. We don't have large factories. We don't have large vacant industrial buildings for sale. And what we do have is lease space, some leased land. We do have some maybe 5 or 6 commercial properties that are for sale. I'm seeing a little bit of interest in some medical, but nothing. 1 or 2 interests in retail along the Silas Deane Highway. As the Silas Deane, as businesses start coming in, that's picking up the interest along the Silas Deane Highway, like AutoZone, Wang's Palace, some of those other buildings that have been coming in and renovating. So hopefully, if that continues, that will pique interest. But Silas Deane is a fairly old corridor. It needs some influx of investment, and I think that's starting to trickle in now. We just kind of try to keep our finger on that and trying to entice more interest.
Yeah, and regarding having a little, having more resources of any type, but I was just thinking with CT Pharma in town, we're kind of thinking that as they pick up steam, ancillary office space and vendor space, feeding off of their existence, either from Yale or UConn or Jackson Labs. I don't know. I mean, is that something that you have a budget and you're marketing towards, or?
We will be. I mean, that's an excellent point. That was discussed when Pharma came in, Connecticut Farmer came in. We're starting to see more of a little bit of a medical cluster in Rocky Hill. So we talked about, let's start looking at biomedical research and development along those lines. And that's one of the sectors I had mentioned earlier that we want to focus on and do, maybe focus our outreach on that, because we're starting to see that cluster. And excellent point.
I'm all set. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah,
Chris?
I said, yeah. So we mentioned the residential is picking up. One of the things that I think is another trend that is probably here to stay for a while is, or maybe not, is the traditional office space kind of getting wound down as more people work from home permanently. Given that we have a few office parks in town, I know in the past we've talked about doing things like setting up like an OP1 zone or expanding use to include clean manufacturing assembly, things like that. Is there any, I don't know if it'd be funding, but is there any research required to see if the town needs to pivot to open up some of those uses, if things like, the big building across Channel 3, I don't know if that's back at full occupancy or not yet, but as people kind of shift away from the, the more traditional cubicle office setup, do we need to do anything to accommodate that over the next coming years?
We're not sure about the next coming years, but I do work with the realtors. They're fully aware of some of the issues. In fact, there may even, the new offices that will be continued to be occupied, they may even need, one vein of thought is they may even need more space, taking into consideration the distancing requirements that now are 6 feet. Before they had cubicles and pod cubicles, and they crowded the spaces. Now they're looking at maybe we need more space, we need more ventilation. So that there's another side of the coin. As far as the zoning goes, we did get Economic Development Commission did get the zone through the Planning and Zoning Commission changed to allow advanced manufacturing in the office park, Corporate Ridge, and Executive Office Park. We did get the B2 zone in, but talking to K&S, they're owners of much of the property in Corporate Ridge a year and a half or 2 years ago. We were talking, Richie and I were talking to the manager, and he had indicated that, businesses may be pulling out, going to Glastonbury or in other locations because, in Glastonbury, for example, they have office parks that have mixed uses. They have entertainment, they have venues for the workers. And that's something I think we need to look at. Maybe opening up some of our areas for more mix of uses, not necessarily residential, but, more different types of uses, maybe limited retail, entertainment. That works. That's what the younger workforce is looking for now and will be looking for in the future.
Thanks.
Anybody else have questions for Ray? I do have a few also. Okay, I don't see anybody else. Ray, you mentioned, well, first of all, business development is very important to the town's tax base. That's how we're able to, one of the ways we're able to help keep our mill rate in check as we continue to grow the business sector. You mentioned that there's not a lot of property available for development as new property, but is it also the inventory of, what does the inventory of existing properties that may be for rent look like at this time?
Many of the properties are what they'd call maybe not Class A, excuse me, but Class B. Class A would be Corporate Ridge. Class B is the next step, maybe some of the older medical buildings. There's quite a bit of that. I've been getting requests for, 25, 30 foot ceilings plus. We don't have any of that in Rocky Hill. The highest ceiling we probably have is close to 25 feet, but very limited space. That would be more for warehouse distribution type uses. There've been a lot of requests for existing large buildings, which 150 to 200,000 square feet. We don't have that either, that are
Right.
not occupied, that are vacant. But we do have some properties that could accommodate new building, that are appropriately zoned for that type of use. So the challenge is to try to farm out those properties that are available, and hopefully, go fishing for a catch. And you have to catch the fish, right? So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it sounds like in the short term, there's not a lot of, we don't have a lot of property available for new incoming businesses. It's existing structures that may need renovation and business coming.
well, for example, Simonize, they just bought 299 Dividend Road, the old American furniture rental. They
Right.
bought that property for expansion. They'll be renovating it to their specifications.
Okay.
Virginia Industries, like over on Elm Street, behind Big Y, the factory behind Big Y. Now, Microcare relocated some of their facilities there about 3 years ago. And this past winter, they came in and they're expanding another 10,000 square feet within that building. And they have a couple other businesses within that 125,000 square foot building. We have quite a bit of, we have office space available, some Class A office space available. We have some warehouse, American Furniture Rental, some office space also on Dividend Road. And, here and there, we have some retail vacancies in some of the retail plazas.
And just kind of following up on that, and I appreciate the info on the last year. Obviously, has been particularly challenging to a lot of businesses. So we're talking about new businesses coming in. Do you have an idea of how our local business community has done through the COVID process? Have any of them reached out to you for assistance? We're obviously going to have some American Rescue Plan money coming in. We haven't earmarked how we're using that. We don't know what the rules are yet. Just trying to get an idea for what we may do going forward, how COVID's affected our business community.
Not many businesses have ever reached out to the town for, because when they do reach out, they're looking for funding. The town does not have funding for that, but what we were doing is, passing along information that we received, the hundreds of thousands of emails that we would get from the state, SBA, other nonprofit organizations that are in the industry, pass that on to the chamber. Also have that posted to our website and have John Murphy, post that to our other social media platforms in town. But as far as businesses contacting me directly, only one or two have. Restaurants. I did talk to Dakota. They are not opening up. I don't know if they're going to open up. I got another contact by a restaurant who had applied for a state grant, did not hear. So I followed up on that. But just mainly we've been trying to just pass the information out as much as we, when they would call, which was fairly infrequently, because a lot of them weren't here. They stayed at home, that weren't operating, and some now are still not here. Some may never come back, I think. They don't need offices here. I know one manufacturer, they closed down their offices because they don't need people in their buildings. They're just doing everything from home. Contractors leaving from their home. Now, the back office from their home.
And the last question, you mentioned the TIF concept. Could you elaborate a little bit? When did we start working on it? When was it introduced? And what steps do we have left to kind of complete that process?
Yeah, we introduced that last year through the Connecticut Main Street Center. The executive director, Patrick McMahon, I believe, did a presentation to the town council on the TIF program. Basically is designating an area, a district in town that's in need of redevelopment repair or upgrading. And then planning out what types of potential businesses would go or improvements needed to be made within the district. And then taking the increased in assessed value, the money as a result of the improvement, and putting that back into the district, for example, to build new sidewalks, infrastructure, to do whatever we think would be needed within that district, or it could be given back to a developer or loaned back to a developer who's doing an improvement within the district. We started that planning function. Being assisted with the help of the planning department. We started looking at mapping, laying out boundaries, and then COVID hit, and then planning and development and zoning, they were focused on getting the restaurants, all of the executive orders for the health of the restaurants they were involved in, so that stopped. So this upcoming budget year, that's one of the activities that we have to finish. We need to continue with the boundaries and actually going through the district properties, which would really be the town center area, including Ames and down to Glastonbury Avenue and a little bit down Silas-Dean Highway. Looking at those properties, trying to come up with, okay, what needs to be improved, and then actually just drafting up the language, which really would be looking at what they do in Windsor Locks and Somers, Connecticut, and having assistance from the town, from the Connecticut Main Street Center to come in and help us just kind of draw all that together. But we do need to look at the assessed values and the potential of increased assessed value for the future. So that's kind of where we kind of get hung up. So we need to talk to the assessor. We need to sit down and just spend time coming up with those values, potential values for the future.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else before we move forward? Punkage?
Yeah, I have another just a follow-up question, Ray, because something you said to Alan here, and it was in the questionnaire as well, which Don returned to us with the responses. This is about the database, right? The business database. And when you said you've been communicating with the business community through the chamber, wouldn't you think it would be more efficient and effective if you had a direct link to the businesses which are in town, and that database, which is, it sounds like it's not updated, was updated, and you were able to actually communicate directly with the business community here in town?
Yeah, we've had a business inventory online since 2016. It has probably about 990 businesses listed on it. I've been updating it for quite a while. It's pretty labor intensive, and it kind of goes back to one of my daily activities, right? Sitting here for hours going through, updating the businesses, going back to the state Secretary of State, trying to find contacts, but I'm updating it. I've updated it a bit this past winter, and I will hopefully have it finished before I have to go back and update it again, probably this summer.
No, so I'm trying to be constructive here. What would make it happen more quickly for you? Instead of you scanning through the website, I don't find it a very useful use of your time. I think you could be doing many more important things. I'm sure you would agree with that. So what do we need to do here to have that kind of basic update, which will help you actually communicate more efficiently and effectively with the business community, instead of you going on Secretary of State website and looking every day or every week or whatever that frequency is. I'm just thinking if there is a way to do it better, right?
Well, yeah, probably having an intern come in and do that type of tedious, busy work might help. Originally, it was done by Camille Gilbert when she first started. She actually put the original list together. Then we updated it from there. Camille Gerbil now is in the Human Resource Department. But she actually originated this list, but if we can get somebody in to do that tedious work and also just make a couple of phone calls, that would help, I think, tremendously to get this thing going and put it in a format that's actually user-friendly or easier to use than a Excel spreadsheet. Right now, maybe we have categories assigned to it. I'm on the R's right now, so I'm almost done with the update, but it could use some sprucing up too.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further questions, we'll move forward to the assessor on page 18 and 19. Ray, thank you.
You're welcome.
Alan,
Thank you.
Alan,
Yes,
this is Don Francis, Registrar of Voters.
yes, Don, would you like to?
I've been trying to get on this program for over almost an hour. I had to wait for my wife to come home and set it up for me. I just like to say you've turned the page on the registrar's budget list. And I just indicate that we are down about 2.5% overall. But I would like to also say that, and I'll pat myself on the back and my whole department for the job we did in COVID in the presidential election last year. We were fortunate enough to have about 30 potential volunteers from Power the Polls organization, of which we used about 26 of these people at the polls. We've had numerous compliments afterwards from voters in town. And I just like to say that I think we did a great job. No one that I know of came down with the virus. None of our workers, we had a problem. Many of our older workers refused to work. Their family would not allow them to work in some cases. Chris, you had a question earlier that I could not respond to, and I haven't written it down. So if you would like to,
Yeah,
see if I can answer it.
Yeah, and I think it'll hopefully be fairly quick. So last year we had all the early voting, the mail-in voting, the no absentee. This year the executive order, I believe, is going to expire, but there may be some federal legislation that changes it. So my question was, is there a budgetary impact that we should take into consideration kind of either way? If the executive order stays versus what we had last year, or if we go back to how it was pre-COVID, where you have to show up on election day versus the expanded absentee voting, does that make an impact to your, your overall budget?
It would be slight, Chris. Be additional ballots, but I'm not concerned with that.
Okay.
I think we'd be covered.
Thanks.
Thank you, Alan. Anything else?
Any other questions for Don? No. Don, thank you for your patience and your diligence to logging in.
Thank you.
All right.
Good luck, Stuart.
Move over to the assessors on page 18 and 19. Stuart, thank you for joining us, and I see you're in uniform, and take this opportunity to also thank you for your service to our country.
It's an honor to be able to serve. Just a brief overview, the only increases in my budget are contractually obligated software agreements. That's on line 5343. So my CAMA and admin system increased their prices this year. And that's essentially my increase in the budget. You can see my budget's a net decrease.
Yep. Any questions for Stuart? Stuart, we made it easy on you tonight, so thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stuart.
If there's no objections, we'll move forward to the tax collector, page 20 and 21.
Hello, how are you tonight?
Hi, Elaine.
The only increase I have is in the training. Is because now the tax association and the CCMC is asking us to be trained to get our recertification. So myself and the 2 employees I have here, we're all CCMCs and certified. So to keep our certification, we have to attend workshops and so many classes. That's what I have for.
All right, we'll open it up to questions. Any questions at this point?
Just real quick, the training looks like it's the same as was adopted last year. So was it supposed to, did you say it went up or?
I went up, was it 1,000? Did I go up a little bit? Yeah, because we did go up a little bit. But
It looks like the change is from what your projected use was, but I think the budget item may have stayed the same.
Right.
John, is that correct?
I think it's a change from the current. It's a
Just
change from the
change
current.
Okay,
Yes,
Okay.
not from the budget.
not from the
Okay.
budget. Okay.
sorry about that.
That's okay.
Any other questions for Elaine? No?
The technology software piece, it looks like we've got some savings there. Is that because we switched software? Do we consolidate somewhere? How do we save $4,000 there?
Because we'd send out a few letters that we had to go out, extra demands notices last year with the COVID, and then the mayor's letter we also sent out. And I'm also saving some money for sending out the delinquent and demand notices. Extra there because they were printing it, but we'll do it in-house.
And that had rolled up to the technology software line.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Any other questions before we move forward? Not seeing any. Elaine, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
We'll move forward to the town clerk, page 30 and 31.
Okay, I don't know if you can hear me and see me yet.
We can hear you.
Okay, can you see me?
Now we can see you.
All right. I can't see me, so that's a good thing. My name is Sandy Willaba. I'm the town clerk, and it's a pleasure to be before the Rocky Hill Town Council members, all of you, and the town manager and other town staff. My budget has increased in the area of salaries because of contracts with the unions. Also underneath the elections and vitals, I have increased that because I issue and I pay for the absentee ballots. So I am anticipating more use of those because the Secretary of State's office is campaigning for no excuse absentee ballots and early voting. That is not yet in place. She will try to put that on the ballot next year, and if it goes through, it will be effective 2024. But she has gotten word that people really enjoy having absentee ballots. So I increased that. I also increased for vital records. I don't know if you can see this. This is a normal death vital record. They're $140 a piece. This is the 2020, and if you see, it's bigger. So we've had a lot more deaths in 2020, so we had to get a bigger book, unfortunately. So the money also goes toward getting our binders also in our paper. We have a new program coming in. It's a death registry. It's going to be all electronic so that we will be getting our papers sent to us electronically, which we'll have to print off on paper rather than having it come in from other towns. And you were also talking about land records. So I just want to give you a little statisticals. In 2019 of January, we did 196 land records, 2020 of January, 230, and 2021 of January, 259. In February, 191 for 2019, 2020, 183, 2021, 293. March 2019, 201. March 2020, 223. March 2021, 338. April 2019, 337. April 2020, 223. And as of today, 237. So we have time to maybe beat 2019. It is a seller's market, and we are seeing that. We have not stopped doing land recordings all during COVID. We accept them through our Dropbox. We accept it electronically, in person, and through the mail or courier. So land records are really booming. So I wanted to give you that information. I think that's the only increase, maybe dues and subscriptions, because we have to belong to all these different associations in order to get our certifications and our training. So we belong to the International, we belong to the Connecticut Town Clerks Association, New England Town Clerks Association, and then the County Association. So there's 4 sets of dues for each member of my office. Are there any questions that I can answer?
Do we have any questions, Ed? Go ahead, Ed.
Hey, Sandra, probably one of the more exciting town clerk presentations in a while. John Emanuel has probably been on many more budget hearings than I, but this for me was certainly the most exciting in any event. You, I guess, started with helping land records and cleaning up some information, and I was wondering if you'd give us status on land records.
Land records are all cleaned up from what happened before I was hired. And
Okay.
right now I am in the process of going back indexing, back scanning, so that more records are available to the public. With COVID, people couldn't come into our office, but they still need to do title search. They still need to record documents. We are back in the early 1940s. I'm on volume 43. That means I have 42 volumes left to do. And they will all be online and available to the public to view, to print. So
Okay, thank you. Good. I'm all set. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, Sandy, thank you.
Thank you.
The next category is information technology, page 34 and 35.
Hi, good evening, everybody.
Hi, John.
So I wish I could say that we've been flat like a lot of the other budgets have been. Unfortunately, that's not the case this upcoming budget cycle. We've been hit with 5 to 10% increases almost across the boards from just about every vendor possible. One thing I would like to note is the line 5342 and 5343. Part of that increase is almost entirely driven on 5342 by our backup vendor. And there was 9,000 taken out of 5343 for integration into our endpoint managed security that we did last year. That kind of morphed into including our antivirus. So that amount was added into 5342 and reduced from 5343. Like I said, unfortunately, Microsoft alone was a 10% increase. So a lot of that savings that would have been in 5343 were offset by the fact that we had price increases. Our online backup, which is really our best line of defense against things like ransomware, went up almost 150%. And a lot of that is entirely due to the amount of volume that we have for backup. I'm currently looking to see if there's other vendors out there that'll provide us the same level of service with a lesser rate of data storage, because that's just an outrageous increase for us to have to swallow.
Okay. Ready for questions, John?
Absolutely.
All right. Do we have questions for John? We may make it easy on you. John, I have one. I'm not sure how directly it derives to our budget. This particular year with COVID, obviously all these meetings are virtual. We had to put technology into place to make that happen. Has that helped, hindered, impacted operations and budgets for your department?
Not, okay, so there's two main areas where that would come into play. The first is the cost of Zoom, which all things considered is relatively minor. It's a, we're talking in a budgetary number of $1,200 for the year. So it's nothing major by any stretch of the imagination. What really, COVID, what really drives that pricing a little bit is the remote access. So that works out to about $4,000 a year on top of what we would normally pay for jumping off of the police department's NetMotion remote access VPN.
Okay. I mean, I know, at least for myself, I found it very helpful to be able to continue these meetings, even though remote. I mean, we miss some of the interaction of being in person, but the fact we were able to conduct business as usual remotely, I think is shows a great job you guys did in working to get this happen, really in an unplanned type event.
Thank you.
So thank you for that. Anybody have any other questions before we move forward? Jeff?
Just one quick question. And the answer is probably to be determined, but just to keep them back in mind, I don't know if you, John, or John Mayer, when we start learning about the usages for the ARP funding that we're going to be getting, I wonder, have you been hearing any rumblings about possibly using some of that funding towards some of our IT needs for communications with the public and websites and things like that, where things we're already expending money on, we could put toward things like that?
I haven't. I think that's more a question for John Mayer.
Under infrastructure, right?
Or communications, or I'm not sure.
I have no idea what that money can be used for to give a good answer to it. The wording is very vague, except if you want to put it into water projects and other things infrastructure related. So it's really hard to say what we can use that money for right now, because there's very little guidance.
And maybe just something to keep on our pending list as we start hearing about the proper usages of it. That may be a spot where we can put some money towards some of those expenses we're incurring.
Ed?
John Nowakowski, you have to do a lot of you did a lot of upgrading over the year, no, in terms of your systems and even the software. I know you said you're getting 5% increases from vendors, but you probably enhanced those, no?
Yes, certainly. We as part of those maintenance agreements that we have and the ongoing software, even for Microsoft, that allows us to roll out newer versions of Office that we've started rolling out Office 2019 to the desktops. It keeps our Windows 10 infrastructure in place, so that way we can make sure that we're not falling behind on security patches and things like that. The other vendors are compliance related and security related, so we want to make sure that we're not falling behind on any of those. And during the last major exchange event with the Hafnium Group, part of that money that we spent on the cybersecurity paid through in dividends, because I had a phone call Monday morning at 2 a.m. Hey, can we isolate your Exchange server because you have something bad going on here? And that was 2 days before we found out it was a zero-day event. So that would have kept us from chasing our tails for weeks on end.
Yeah, we couldn't have afforded it at that time either, given the pandemic. So you started out the year before the pandemic hit, I think, with a cybersecurity town-wide seminar where we all kind of came in, and I think you had Kerma, or Dana had Kerma come out and kind of host that for us. Are you planning that again?
I would love to plan that again. I'm waiting for the day when we can all do this, up in the council chambers and get back to our normal routines. But absolutely, education like that is extremely important. And as far as keeping, not only someone like myself who's plugged in and does this on a day to day, but we're only as good as our weakest link. And if we have an employee that through no fault of their own just isn't educated in that type of stuff, then we could give away the farm without realizing it.
Yeah, I know after that session, we handed out camera guards. So on the laptop of the computer, little did we know that we would go in the opposite direction, and everybody would be using their camera all the time on their laptop or their computer. But boy, things have changed in the course of a year and a half, huh?
Yes, they have.
I'm good, thank you.
Chris?
Yeah, I have a few that should be quick. So we talked about the website migration that's coming up for this year. That's not out of this budget, or is it?
It was the first payment actually was out of this current year's budget. The second payment is included in that budget as well. So we entered into a 4-year agreement to spread out the development costs instead of getting hit with the bill all up front.
And I guess I should clarify, but with this budget, I mean your IT budget, or is that
it is
coming
out of my IT budget? Yes.
Oh, okay. And then in looking at 5746, it looks like year to date, we're only around $6,000. Is that because we have an end of year replenishment of hardware that's coming up, or does it look like we might finish that one a little short?
No, we typically hold off on computer purchases for the bulk of the computer purchases until this time. I'm actually have a phone call with my vendor next week to determine our computer needs.
And then finally, can you help me with 5736, the technical equipment? It looks like this might have been an item that we recently added in the previous budget. And it seems like we might be trying to find what the right number for that account is. Could you help me understand kind of what's in there?
Sure. That item is actually for technical equipment such as switches and servers. So the number will kind of fluctuate a little bit depending upon what our actual needs are for the year. I try and space it out so that we're not, 1 year we might need a server, the next year we might need a switch. Following year we might need to replenish the firewall or anything that's gone end of life.
All right, so that explains some of the the fluidity in that line. All right, thank you.
Ed, you got another one?
Yeah, I recall, John, the phone lines going down at one point. Was that switchgear in
Yes,
your
that is
budget?
correct.
And yep, and I mean, what did that cost us, and how did you fix it? And are we out in the cloud on some of that now?
Okay, lot to unpack there. First of all, that was caused by a malfunctioning switch, which was internal to our network. That was replaced. That was a warranty item, so that we had that replaced without issue. The bigger issue is moving the phone system themselves. Personally, I believe that the VoIP systems have become robust enough with the hosted solutions that they should be moved out to the cloud. We're still on our current.
VoIP meaning voice over IP.
Yes, that is correct.
Through the computer network.
Yes. Right. So I personally believe that should be moved to the cloud, and we're actively searching for acceptable partners. And when I say acceptable, I mean somebody that will work with us and provide references for having supported public safety dispatch centers. So that way, if anything bad should happen, it's something that they can kind of guarantee the uptime and fix quickly.
We may have a contact now after last council meeting. Emergency management did speak before us at the state level, and they may have a name or two for us to consider. So I guess maybe through John, through James, or Rich or whoever.
I'll contact
Okay,
Jane.
thank you.
Any additional questions on IT for John? If there's no objections, we'll move forward then to Town Council, page 10 and 11.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. John, I assume you're
Yeah,
presenting the Town Council?
yeah, I'm just putting my uniform on before I get going. Yeah,
You gotta
the
change
town
hats?
council, yeah. I got my camouflage on, so usually I'm muted, so you can't hear what I'm saying, so I'm decoding. Yeah, the town council budget is primarily the three major organizations that the town belongs to. Capital Region Council of Governments, or CROG, Connecticut Council of Municipalities, CCM, or Connecticut Council of Small Cities, or COST. That's the major bulk of the cost in the town council's budget. And then they have an additional $2,000 for to cover expenses if you incur expenses doing your town counseling job, attending seminars, or anything like that. So I think it went down, CROG went down a bit so that this budget is slightly less than last year. But again, it's primarily membership fees.
Okay. Any questions on the Town Council budget?
Yeah, question for John. Are we, as a council, are we able to have a fundraiser that would put money into the town council budget? Is that something us as a council, we could band together and, you know, and do a fundraiser to raise money and then put forward that specifically to go in a council budget?
Being elected officials, any fundraiser you'd think might get back into the election side. So I guess it would be how comfortable the council is in doing something like that. And you may just want to check with our town attorney as opposed to myself.
Thanks.
Any other questions on the council budget? Seeing none, and if there's no objections, we'll move forward to the town manager budget, page 12 and 13.
Yep, that's the town manager's budget for the town manager as well as the assistant. We record the expenses associated with the minutes taken at the various council meetings as well as subcommittees and so on. And then it's just general expenses for the town manager's office that incur over the budget year.
Okay. Any questions for John on the town manager's budget? Seeing none, if there's no objections, we'll move forward to the finance and accounting budget on page 16 and 17.
Yep, the finance budget is what handles all the monetary transactions in the town with a finance director, accounting clerks for payroll and accounts payable, as well as the treasurer, accounting managers in there. Also included in there is funds for the yearly audit that's done at June 30th, as well as the costs associated with the town's munis accounting system and also training expenses for various classes, primarily associated probably with the munis software and so on.
Okay, open it up for questions. Not seeing any.
Jeff, just to, on the full-time salaries going up about 13% from the last budget, is there something besides salary increases in that, or?
Probably filling in the finance director's position, as well as increase in salaries.
Okay. Is that for, what part of a year is that taking into account for like a finance director?
Probably the 12 months.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, and if there's no objections, we'll move forward to central services on page 22 and 23.
Yep. This is more the cost of operating an office. It has the cost of the postage machine. This pays primarily most of the postage associated with the various departments, except for tax, I believe. Tax has their own line. Because we're still required to post all the meetings and legal notices in the newspaper, it covers advertising for a high percentage of the departments that do place advertisements in the newspapers. The various printing expenses, primarily the budget books, and perhaps maybe something tied into a referendum if we do have it. General office supplies. The food account is probably going to go over with all the retirements that we're having to buy cake for and coffee cake. And the last one is for office equipment. It used to be a more prevalent account when we used to have more equipment as opposed to items now that are built-in software and the multi-talented photocopy machines that you have. But one thing we're trying to do is upgrade the time clocks, at our parks. Right now, we're going to upgrade the time clocks at the highway garage and probably at the parks garage next, so that it can feed into our Munis payroll system. That's a quick summary of Central.
I didn't see you change hats, John, so I was confused in which department. All right, do we have questions for John on the central supplies? Nope, not seeing anybody with that.
John, I have a question for you.
Go ahead, Pankaj.
So, John, tell me, how can we reduce paper use for town activities? Like you're sending out this package every 2 weeks in a big envelope with like 50 pages printed out. Every time I see that, my heart like kind of sinks.
By Sock and Hammer Mill. I think it's a change in how you view a document. I think as you see the younger crowd coming in with their uses of all their electronic gadgets, they're more comfortable reading, off those screens and iPads and laptops and so on, where the older crowd still likes that piece of paper and putting in being able to mark it up and so on. But if you're willing to, we could send you your packets or anyone else that wants it electronically. Again, the bulk of the paper that you generally get in your town council packet is, the minutes. And we could get away from, if people don't need to want to keep a paper copy for historical reasons or something like that, we can switch over and experiment and try to reduce that amount of paper by going electronic. If you like to be the first.
I would totally sign up for that, but I have a better idea. Would you mind actually breaking this down into what you think we need to do, like statutorily, right, whatever the word is, we need to send out on paper, right? And versus what we can get rid of, right? So I'm sure all the people sitting here, town councilmen and women, will sign up for what I'm signing for. I'm pretty sure of that. But outside of that, that's not going to make a dent here. I'm trying to like change a trajectory here, John. So if you can give me a breakdown at some point by the time you go for the budget.
No, I just tend to think the council has to approve their minutes. At the end of that meeting, those official minutes go into one of Sandy's books downstairs that she didn't show you, but she'll show you next year. And that's a historical document. I guess we run into the problems where when we have a presentation and they bring in a 20-page PowerPoint, do the counselors like to have that piece of paper, or are they comfortable following it on the screen? That could eliminate 20 times 9 pages. And that, if you want to review the minutes on the screen, not have a piece of paper, then we can eliminate another 30 pages that way there. So it's more the comfort level of what you want. I think you do need a copy of resolutions and so on. But if you kind of look at it, some of these budgets, agendas could probably be less than 10 pages in most of the time.
Yeah, but it all adds up. So I don't want to belabor the point, but I mean, this is not about like $5,000 here or $10,000 there. I just don't agree with the direction we are in. Like, we are not making any changes, looking around this world and like saying like, everybody is making those changes, right? I mean, it's just habits, right? I mean, and I don't particularly, I'm not worried about like $5,000 or 30 pages. I just want to make sure that we move in the right direction. And we did make some changes last time, John. I thank you for that. I think you reduced some, expenses on. I think it was on printing. I think you did cut a little bit there. So I thank you for that. I'm just looking for, if it needs a resolution, I'm ready to like put it out there for whatever we need to cut on like this printing costs and paper usage and envelope costs and everything we send out there. Like, and again, this is not really about the money. It's really about like a principle, which I believe like we should all march towards, is using less of our like resources. And that's all I'm going for, like, really. And I'm just taking a stand on that. That's all.
Yep. Also, the other thing is we're getting a lot of bills sent electronically. And then generally we have to print them off so that we can file them to support the expenditure for the auditors. So that's something that comes electronically, but we print it off for the auditors' sake to support expenses and so on. So
yeah, can you tell me, like, in the next time we meet on this, if we can make some adjustments to our usage there? Like, if you need to.
I don't think I can do it by the next time because I have a queue. So you're now on the bottom of the queue that I'll now eventually get to. But yes.
Well, then I have to just like fight this in my caucus, I guess.
Yeah, I got to put it on that piece of paper. I got to write it down on that piece of paper.
All right. So either way, we'll get it done, right, John? Either you will do it or I will make it work in my caucus. How we can get to that.
Yeah.
But that's all. I just need action on this, John. I really do. And thank you for consideration.
Any additional questions on central services? No. Okay. If there's no objections, we'll move forward to legal on page 24 and 25.
Legal is associated with the town attorney that handles most of our legal cases. It also includes our labor attorney that helps us with personnel issues as well as labor contracts and tax appeals for those taxpayers that think their value of their property is too high and they challenge it through the courts and so on. It's kind of a you put a number in and hope that you're correct. Some years you have it slow where you don't have many legal issues, and then then boom, you hit a revaluation, and then you get a number of assessment appeal cases. So I think we did raise it up a bit with some, just on the general legal fees, just to increase there. And we do have 2 labor contracts coming up this year that are expiring on June 30th. So we increased our labor counselor a pretty good chunk to help us cover that, as well as other labor personnel issues.
Questions for John on legal fees?
Yeah, I just have a question around the tax appeals. You mentioned it. You know, I would expect that we would see more of a spike or an ebb and a flow when we're closer to a reval. Any thought on if that's something where, as we look at potentially pulling some out, and I know you don't have a crystal ball, but do we have a sense of, you know, year 1 or 2 after a reval, it picks up and then tapers off, or is it more of that consistent number around that 80,000?
Well, I tend to think if the 80,000 is maybe kind of high, because I believe the courts were pretty much closed last year. So that not many of these cases were being processed and closed out quickly. So they might have been on the attorney's desk for a while. So hopefully the courts will pick up and they'll start settling some of these cases. That will probably impact the 80,000, but hopefully it will drop in the coming year until I think it's the 23 reval.
Thanks.
Other questions for John? John, just one, I have one myself. Legal retainer, this year we're projecting $12,000. We budgeted 36,000. And next year we're still budgeting 36. Was that a year that just was relatively low?
I think what happened is that exactly our fees, or the hourly work that the town attorney was doing, was much lower than our retainage. So I think they dropped the retainage and just charged us the hourly fee, which was probably coming in the hundreds of dollars. But I think if we see things pick up, then they'll start charging that retainage back. So it was more that they didn't charge us the retainage. They actually charged us more the actual hours worked, which came in lower than the retainage. And it was probably reflected in the general legal fee line.
Okay. And the expectation is next year we may go back to a more normal year. Is that?
Well, hopefully not, but I tend to think yes, with a couple of the things that are hanging out there that could come to light next year.
And the other question, I know I've asked this in other ways in a note I had sent you as well. Does our town attorney also offer labor counsel services that we may be able to utilize, or is that extremely specialized where we have to go to a special labor counsel?
Well, I don't know if it's specialized as opposed to a well-experienced attorney that we've had for a while. Generally, when you go with a town attorney and you go with a larger firm, they have multiple disciplines, and they do have a labor attorney associated with that. But we've been with our current one for a number of years and have a good working relationship with that person, and very well experienced.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding Rocky Hill's workforce.
Danny, you want to comment?
If I could, we actually saved money, since this particular attorney has such intimate knowledge of what's happening within our departments, and there's less time filling him or her in on the background. They know the background.
Mm-hmm. That's good to know. So at least we're looking at the cost
That's,
both sides, and we're making a decision based
Yeah.
upon some of that and knowledge.
yeah, you
experience.
don't see, for instance, you don't see fees for reading the file.
Mhm. Okay. Very good. I appreciate that. Any additional questions on legal before we move forward? Okay, if there's no objections, we'll move forward to probate, our last category, page 26 and 27.
Rocky Hill, Newington, and Weathersfield share the probate court for those three, for our three towns. It's located in Newington, and generally we share the expenses associated with that court. And it's pretty much come down to, based on the grand list, I think is what they base the ratio of spreading out the expenditures. And it's pretty much got to the costs associated with it is about split a third, and so on. And what's reflected on here is last year's expenditures with an estimated 4% increase in which Rocky Hill would take a third of the expense. And again, we haven't got the final bill, which usually comes in closer to the start of the budget year, but that's pretty much the probate court expenditure.
Any questions on probate for John? Not seeing any. Before we entertain a motion to adjourn, just to let everybody know, according to the schedule, our next budget meeting will be April 29th, starting at 5:30 again. At that point, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Do we have a second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 10-0. Thanks, John, for joining us. Everybody have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Hey, John, one thing, quickly. Thanks for putting up with me on that one. Since I found you at the end, I was going to send you an email. I'm saying this from actually from very good intentions. I didn't want to put you on the spot, but I just wanted to do something about this. And I know you can make it happen. So I just wanted to like kind of, in a good way, box you into that.
Yeah.
But it was with good intentions.